Mountaineer friends, I have a good one today. I'm Eugene Napoleon. This is Relatively Sports, which is my show, and I'm greatly appreciative and blessed to have a podcast such as this where we can go back and kind of talk to some of the Mountaineer greats and some of my old teammates and buddies, and I have a good one today. Brad Metheny is, for me, the salt of the earth. When I met this young man many, many years ago at WVU, transferred in from Pittsburgh, as a lot of you know, Brad was one of the first people I actually met, and we've been teammates and friends ever since. So welcome to the show, Brad. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you, my dude. Brad Metheny.
Thanks for having me, Eugene, and really appreciate what you do, like watching your podcasts and staying in touch and following you. And again, things like carried over from WVU, continued success, and looking forward to this afternoon.
Thank you. Now, here's what's interesting. So you probably didn't even know this. When AB and I transferred in, we came in 86 and had to sit out that season because of the transfer rules back then. And meeting you meant so much because you coming from Kingwood, West Virginia. See, I remember that.
Yeah.
I always looked at you and AB the same as, wow, man, this guy, this is what a Mountaineer is all about. And I've always felt that. And I learned a lot. You have no idea. I learned a lot about the state of West Virginia, what it meant to be a true Mountaineer, what it meant to really wear those colors and understand not only in Morgantown, but what it meant throughout the whole state. And I want to credit you for that, you pouring into us and talking to us about the culture, the state. It was a great thing, man. So I want to thank, I don't know if I ever told you that, but I'm telling you that now. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Well, it was, like you said, a dream come true for me. I'd verbally committed to go play running back at Glenville State when Donnie Young called and invited me to walk on as a strong safety at WVU. And that 86 season was my last year of playing because of the knee injury. And remember vividly you and AB coming in and knowing that you guys were critical pieces to what we at that point in time thought was going to be a really special team and group down the road. And it ended up being just that. And you guys were key pieces to the puzzle. And like I said, with Andre in the running back position, with you and AB coming in and adding to that, we knew we had the weapons to add with Major and Calvin Phillips and Grant Espel and Keith Wynn and Reggie Rembert and that group of receivers. We knew we were pretty talented on offense, and again can go down the list of all the defensive teammates that we had, especially the special ones like Ronaldo and Bo and Chris Herring and Chris Parker and Willie Edwards, and it just was a special group.
Absolutely. It's interesting when you was done playing because of the knee injury and you went to the coaching side of being on the staff at WVU. Tell me some of those experiences, Brad. Like, what was that like transitioning from a player and then now being on the staff as a GA?
Well, it was a little bit tough because, again, I was trying to prove myself to my teammates as a player, as a walk-on, and then being able to earn that scholarship a year later. But I thought I had the respect of the teammates and that kind of stuff, and they knew that I gave everything I had. So transitioning over with Coach Nehlen when he said, hey, I know you want to coach, you can be a graduate assistant, finish your undergraduate. So I ended up doing a student assistant for a year, then a GA for 2, and then the computer and video coordinating for a year. And the transition with the student coach and the GA was pretty smooth, to be honest with you, because again, I already knew all the players and had that relationship with them, and they knew I was just gonna, be there to help and try to help the team in any way possible. And then that year, we were out playing basketball at lunch when Scotty Shirley had the heart attack and suddenly passed away, and we ended up having to put me in to run the video and coordinate the video and recruiting part of it. And that was a tough transition. I was in a 12 by 12 room with no windows and no people. And, that was hard for me. So, but again, the coaching part of it, loved every bit of it, and appreciated the coaches taking me under their wing. And I had 2 years in the secondary and then that 1 year with the running back. So it was a great
Right.
experience for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. We had a ball. Again, those experiences, when you play with someone and then they transition into the coaching side of it, it's a little bit easier because we viewed you still as a player.
Yeah.
So we had the respect as a coach, but as a, because you were our age. So it's
Yeah.
so it's like we go to hey, Brad, man, listen. So it was cool and proud of the transition because obviously knowing that that's what you wanted to do, it's a little bit easier from a teammate standpoint to see you still be in the program, part of the program, and you're getting your feet wet on the coaching end of it at that level.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It was a great situation, and we were very proud and happy for you. Now, the funny thing, being involved in coaching at the collegiate level, at that D1 level, when did you make the choice or the decision to say, you know what, I want to go and be a header at the high school level and take what I learned from the collegiate game down to the high school level?
Well, it was that 89 season going into the 90 season. Like I said, I had spent the whole year doing the video coordinating and everything like that. And it was the first year that we had the multi-faceted, I should say, high-tech digital editing system, which we didn't have the converters. We didn't have a lot of the things that we needed to make that job smooth. So, I was putting in 16, 18 hours a day being, a young married person and trying to function. And I'm just a people person. I wanted to be around the players and be out on the field coaching. And really I was stuck in a room for 16 hours a day. And the only time I saw anybody is if I left the room and went out to say hi to Lori and Kim up at the front office or meet a player coming through, transitioning from meeting room to film room type thing. But it was, I went to Coach Nehlen and said, look, I really want to get back out on the field. I want to coach. And he's like, well, let's get you a high school job then. So, again, my expertise at the time was and background was running backs, defensive backs, and we had established coaches on staff at that point in time that probably weren't leaving in the near future. So there wasn't any openings there on staff. And again, I wanted to get out and coach and really do some things. And again, doing the scout team stuff with the offense and defense those years leading up to that last year gave me the foundation and the confidence that that's what I wanted to do, because it was a lot of fun working with the younger players. And like you said, I still had the relationships with the older guys that were in my class and a year behind me that were playing at the what I call the varsity level, and we were working with the scout team guys and getting them prepared to get our offense and defense ready for game day. But I really wanted to coach, so that's when he knew and I knew that I just wanted to get back on the field and coach football.
Right. You know what's funny? Every time I think about Coach Nehlen, and every player that I've interviewed, and I'm going to ask you the same exact thing. I know the older I get, I still stay in touch with Coach and let him know just how much I learned through the years of what it took for him to do what he needed to do to be successful. And when you're younger and you're a hothead and you're immature and all of that stuff, you don't see that in progression.
Right.
You don't see it, right? When you get older and you get out and you start experiencing and living life, and you go back to something that you learned from your header in college. Me, I go back as far as high school, my high school head coach.
Right.
Those are the special times, man, that you kind of understand, wow, this guy was a man's man. And some of the things he put in place were some of the things that was really symbolic to how I was raised in my house. And he took that and molded that into a coaching profession where he was teaching players life skills through football. Now that's what I learned down the road years after. What do you think about that? Is that somewhat your experience?
Preach it every day, just like he did. He was a big advocate and a big promoter of, hey, preparation, preparation. He always had us play the game 100 times over before we actually played the game. This is what you're going to get. Visualize it, play that game 10 times on the bus on the ride, where you're going or whatever. And I've carried that through the coaching, the 33 years that I've done coaching now is I had the opportunity, my first job to coach. Coach Bob Knight was a guy that was Coach Knight coached my dad, coached my older brother, coached me, coached my younger brother. So he went through the 60s, the 70s, all the way to the 2000s with coaching a Metheny type person, and had the utmost respect for him, just like I did Coach Nehlen. But the things that those older coaches instilled in us was, don't ever look back and say you weren't prepared. And so, we're gonna rep their top 3 run plays. We're gonna rep their top 3 pass plays, and they're gonna have to beat us with something different. And I thought Coach Nehlen was excellent at doing that, taking away what somebody wanted to do, making them beat you with plan B or C, and really preparing. And I go back and tell the story numerous times. I was late for one meeting. I missed one meeting at West Virginia. And we're running back from training table, me and Stan, or our roommate at the time, and we're coming up over the hill, coming back to the stadium. Everybody's coming down. I said, "Man, you missed a meeting, Coach knows." So we went in and fessed up, and told Coach, "Hey, we missed a meeting. We didn't think we had one," and we hurried over to training table. And he said, "No problem. That's a pup mistake." And then he remembered at the 7 o'clock meeting to remind the team that we missed the meeting. So we'd see Coach McMichael at 5 a.m. the next morning and run the stadium steps. So 68,000 stadium steps later, I never missed another meeting. And just little things like that he instilled in you that we carry every day that, and again, him and the staff. I mean, Coach Dunlap, Coach Brown, Coach Simmons, Coach Jacobs. I took something from every one of those guys, Doc Holliday, and it just carried over to, leading you down a successful path in coaching from that point on.
Absolutely. You know what's so crazy? I told Coach Newland a few years ago, we were talking, and I said to him, I said, "Coach, listen, some of the moral fiber and the code that you set in all the players, where you don't be late, you're always on time, like you said, you're always prepared. Those are things that help you to become successful in life, right? Period." So it's funny. He had said to me, he said, "Well, I kind of knew that you were going to be successful because of your temperament, and you don't believe in giving up on anything, right?" He said, "So I was flicking through the TV and I'm watching this thing, and all of a sudden this program came on, and I think it was BET or something like that." He said, "And I'm looking at the TV, and there you were." Right? He said, "I started smiling from ear to ear because I knew that you would make the transition no matter what you wanted to do in your life." He said, "And then the funny thing is," he said, "I put a book out and it was on the bestsellers list." He said, "I look up on that list and there you were." He said to me, like, but I told him, I thanked him, Brad, I thanked him because those are some of the things when you instill something in someone, and like you said, you love and respect the man for who he is as a person.
Right.
You don't forget those things, man. Those are traits that you just don't forget. So you just mentioned something which tells me that you took what you learned from the staff, and that's what made you so successful on the high school level. So does the players really understand when you have to instill that stuff, where it comes from? Do you get into that part of telling them, "Listen, here's where this came from"?
We share old stories and reminisce with some of them. And like I said, this is my first year at the school I'm at now. So as I'm there a little bit longer, we'll get into that as far as trying to change the culture of this program and where I'm at now. But yeah, I've used a lot of that. And I tell them the story of climbing out of the well and we're only halfway up the rung, like Coach Nehlen used to tell us, and shooting the Indians shooting the buffalo with one arrow and then having to tie all of them together and shooting them with a bigger arrow and getting the job done type thing. So yeah, we use all those analogies and and old stories to try to sell our point. But again, just I think again, one of the big things that I try to preach to the high school programs that I'm at now is, again, that bond that we had as a team. We did so many things together. We still keep in contact with each other 30 years later. It's one of those things that I think is a life lesson, like you said, that goes for anything. And I'll tell my parents that right off the bat on our introductory meeting, we want to walk away from this thing 4 years later teaching your kids more than football. And it's how to be a better man. It's how to be on time. It's how to be accountable. It's teamwork. It's, setting goals and trying to achieve goals, and everything that Coach Nehlen and that staff taught us as young athletes. Again, it's the game of football teaches you a lot more than just football.
No doubt about it. And listen, man, you said a mouthful there, buddy. You really have. And that's the thing that I'm looking at, what's happening now with these current student athletes and the way things have transitioned. It's a totally different game. It's a totally different culture at the collegiate level. And it's interesting. You kind of lose sight, but the truth of the matter is the Don Nehlens of the world, it would be really difficult for them to live in this culture of coaching.
It's hard as a high school coach right now. And you bring up a great thing. I was Larry Holly's backup for 2 years, and I joke all the time, and I say, Larry had it made, and they said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Shoot, I took every rep on short yardage, goal line, and blitz period." I said, "Larry did team pass and skelly, and played on Saturday." I said, "I got all the beatings and had 8 concussions later." I said, but I said, there was always 1 point separating us, an 88 and an 89, or an 89 and a 90. And it was him sometimes having the higher grade, sometimes it was me. But there was never any conflict, because you just learned to compete, and you learned to be ready when your number was called. And in today's game, I think they've taken away a lot of that, because now they just say, well, yeah, shoot, if I'm going to be number two, I'll just transfer and I'll go somewhere else. Whereas when you and AB transferred, it wasn't like that. It was,
Right.
it wasn't a good fit. There was some different things, and you guys were brought in at WVU and welcomed with open arms, because you became part of the brotherhood. And I just think it's too easy nowadays with the transfer portal, and it even affects high school. I mean, Eugene, I had eight sophomores start on offense for me last year, and before I took the job over in January, 4 of them had transferred high schools. So it's all the way down in the high school level. It's in the Pee Wee youth level. I mean, dads are marketing their kids. Oh, well, I think he's got a better chance to do this over here, and he's going to play this position over there. And, I think they're losing those lessons that we learned, you and I, to compete and have to play, and then cherish
Absolutely.
those times when we got our number called, versus now it's just easier to say, well, I'll go somewhere else. And that's why there's 9,000 people in the portal.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know what would have happened. God bless her to the grave she went. My older sister passed away my freshman year at Pitt. And I didn't like the way they handled that whole situation. So that really started my process in my head about, I got to get out of here. You know what I mean? Because athletically, there would have really been no reason for me to leave. I was one of 3 freshmen that wasn't redshirted.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the future would have been what it would have been. But for personal reasons, it's like I see that this may not have been the right fit for me, because you lose a sister and it almost seemed as though
They didn't.
right. You know what I mean? So that's for me personally.
Right.
But you're 100% right, Brad, about what's going on right now with, you have to compete in life.
Well, when guys transferred back when you and I were playing, it was like you said, it was for situations like that. And it was a rarity. When we got a transfer, it's like, wow, we're getting somebody from some other school. That's great type thing. Now it's an everyday occurrence, and it's, sometimes there's those reasons. I mean, I'm not saying every reason is. Sometimes there's reasons, just like you said. I mean, you have a death in the family, or a grandparent or a mom or dad gets sick, and you got to get closer home to be around them.
Right.
But again, that would be a rare occasion every now and then, not 9,000 kids transferring every year. And but the point I was trying to make is that has filtered down into the high school ranks, and it makes it tough to coach when your exit exams after the season's over. You got to recruit your own kids to stay at your own high school. And
Jeez.
now the rules in Florida, I mean, a kid can play football at school A, play basketball at school B, and play baseball at school C. Or
What?
now they're just made a change that he could be at school A, transfer to school B, and if he doesn't like it, stay at school B, but yep, play for A.
What?
Yeah. So what kind of chemistry and continuity do you build with your program when you're allowing student athletes to do that? So it's really a tough situation coaching wise now. And like you said, I think it drove Coach Nehlen crazy because he is loyal to his players and you know
Absolute.
and we
Absolute.
were loved on and taken care of and given every opportunity. So like I said, I'm just grateful I played in that era and not this one, and took what I took out of it and learned an awful lot.
No, I definitely agree. I have a few more minutes left, but I want to touch on these 2 points with you. So I want to go back to
Okay.
when you were in high school for a quick second.
Okay.
Your years in high school, what did you take from that? And how did that prepare you to move into college? Because that's a really good point. And I want you to expand on that for a second.
Okay. I was not blessed with a high school weight room. We didn't have a weight room where I graduated high school. So to lift weights, I would go to the local civic center and work out on a universal gym. I did a lot of stuff on my own as far as the old creating. Coach Nealon used to tell us all the time, you don't have to have the fancy weight room, improvise and do well. That's what I had to do. I had to run hills. I had to run from one end of town to the other. I had to, be creative and pull your own makeshift sleds and do
Right.
those kind of things to try to train and get myself to where I had to get to compete. And
Right.
more so, more so in the coaching realm, I learned from high school that one of the biggest things I want to do when I became a coach at whatever level was to give my student athletes the best chance I could to move to the next level. And I take a lot of pride in what I've done, over the 33 years. I've had over 150 kids go on and play at the next level. I've had roughly 50 kids play at the D1 level, and I've had 9 play in the NFL. And so that to me was a big motivating factor as a high school coach was, hey, I want to do and expose these kids to every opportunity they can to try to be able to get out and be seen and reap the benefits of the hard work in high school to get to the next level.
Reason why I asked you that question now, see, I got a really good memory. And I remember you and I having these discussions way back when.
Way back, yep.
But I wanted that to come out on this show because I want parents and I want young people to understand. In other words, you put the work in, Brad.
Yeah, I take a lot of pride in trying to help the kids. For a great example, Nikhil Roby Coleman was a defensive back that I had at Frostproof. Nikhil was undersized. I was worried about him playing in the SEC at a 5'8", 160-pound corner. And I asked Monty Kiffin, I said, Coach, do you really think he can survive in the SEC? He said, Coach, he said, I would have questioned it until you sent him up here for the 3-day camp. He said, after watching his ball skills, he said he's better than some of the kids we're playing with right now at Tennessee. And Nikhil they left Tennessee and ended up at Southern Cal. And he had visited West Virginia the last week before the last week of recruiting season. And so they ended up offering him at Southern Cal, and he chose Southern Cal and was the only kid in Southern Cal history to start at wide corner every day that he was at Southern Cal. And he played 3 years at Southern Cal and went to the league, and he's been in the league for 10 years now. This will be his 11th year coming up. And then I had a kid this past draft, got drafted number 53 overall to the Chicago Bears, a defensive lineman that was thought he was a basketball player. And I said, Javon, I said, you're a 6'5" guy. There's point guards bigger than you and better skilled. So I said, why don't you give football a try? And I said, where are you at with basketball? And he says, Coach, he said, I got Virginia and Baylor looking at me. And I said, okay. I said, well, at the end of spring, if you don't have twice as many football offers, I said, I won't say a word to you again about football. He said, you really think so? And Eugene, we took him to the first mega camp and he had 5 D1 offers and he ended up being a 5-star, had 55 offers. And like I said, he was taken 53rd overall after 3 years playing at the University of Florida as a defensive tackle by the Chicago Bears. So those are success stories. And I had another one, a kid being ineligible, was ready to quit school. He ended up with a 1.98 or something like that. He needed an A in an English online class and ended up getting a B. And he said, well, I'm just going to quit, Coach. And I said, no, you're not. You're going to practice with us every day. He said, I can do that. And I said, yeah, but you can't play the games, but you're going to practice. We're going to work on your skills.
Right.
And as a junior, he took every rep on scout team defense. He'd say, can I take a break? Say, yeah, go to right defensive end, go to left defensive end. And we moved him around. He went from 275 down to about 240, got in great shape, left high school after playing his senior year, went to prep school, then to 2 years at junior college, and then 3 years at Arizona State and made a couple practice squads, but is now a guidance counselor and a football coach out in California. So that's what makes it all worthwhile when you have some success stories like that.
Listen, man, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to mark this right now. This is going to be session 1.
Okay.
I'm going to have you back on for session 2. Because I'm going to tell you why, Brad, real quick. There's so much knowledge and there's so much stuff like that you just shared that a lot of these kids and parents need to hear. And that's what this is all about. For me, it's about bringing people on that can give something back, but it's inspirational. So if you don't mind, I'm going to reschedule you for session 2 here in a little bit.
I'd love to do that.
So, if you don't mind, maybe God willing, as a matter of fact, depending on your schedule next week, maybe we can have you back for session 2 next week. Is that okay?
That'll work. Just let me know.
I appreciate you,
I
buddy.
enjoy it. Hey, and I still think back to all the conversations we had that first year UNAB came. Like you said, we were pretty tight. We hung out a lot and shared a lot of deep feelings and everything. And like I said, it was just, it was a great addition to an already special team to get you two to come on and be part of our team and be teammates. And like I said, be brothers forever.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Brad. Thank you for taking the time, brother.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate it.
Take care. Oh, no doubt. I have you back on next week.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right, my Mountaineer fans. This is the one and only from Kingwood, West Virginia, Brad Metheny.